Hey there, Wargamers, and welcome back to another Wargames Delivered video. Be sure to visit us at wargamesdelivered.com to get the paints, miniatures, and supplies used in this video, and also to refer a friend. You guys will both get a $15 discount, and with that, let's get into the video. In this video, we will be finishing all of the small details on Captain America from Marvel United, as well as adding some highlights to enhance our paint job. Check out parts 1 and 2 in the description below. We finished off the base coat colors in the last video, so to start out here, we're going to begin with dark tone and use this paint to pin wash all of the recessed areas, being very careful around all of the colors we painted earlier. And I'm using a very fine detail brush to easily place the wash into the recessed areas, but you can use any size brush as long as you can get it to come to a fine point. And also, this step is completely optional. You can skip it entirely if you'd like to. I like to do this because it's a quick way just to add a bit more depth to those shadowed areas, but you absolutely don't need to if you don't feel like taking the time. Sticking with Army Painter's washes for a bit, we're going to use Flesh Wash to, you guessed it, wash all of the flesh on the mini. This will just add a touch of depth to his skin. And while those washes are drying, we can also block in our metallic details with plate mail metal. Use this on the belt buckle and the buttons on his pouches for a little metallic flare. And once this is dry, you can also add a layer of dark tone over the metallics as well for a little ruggedness on the metallics. Alright, and from here we will move into the actual highlighting on the mini, starting with a 1-to-1 of leather brown and mummy robes. Mummy robes is a great off-white ivory that I use for highlighting quite a bit. It's great for mixing with your base coat color to just give you a simple, lighter highlight. Something to look out for when you're highlighting is try to avoid applying too much paint. Use a small amount of paint and build up the color in layers. This allows you to control the level of contrast and avoid making the miniature look too bright or garish. Another mistake to avoid is using a brush that is too big. A fine detail brush is essential for highlighting small details and for creating smooth blends between colors. Now that the brown highlights are done, we can move on to highlighting the blue of his suit. And you'll want to be extra careful here to avoid making any mistakes here. It's pretty tricky to clean up a gradient made with an airbrush with acrylic paints afterwards, but it is doable. For anyone interested in picking up these paints for yourself, we have a unique promotion for all of the Army Painter paint lines over on our website at wargamesdelivered.com, where if you buy 6, you'll get 3 free paints of your choice with your order. Link for this promotion is in the description below. And as you can see here, we're just using a mix of Voidshield Blue and Ultramarine Blue to pick out the most prominent raised areas. This will make the model pop a bit more from the game table. And for a final highlight, you can also just switch to pure Voidshield Blue and just use this over the most prominent raised areas on the model. Moving on, for the next step, we will highlight all of the red areas using pure red, and over Vampire Red, this will make all of those areas stand out a little bit more. When layering, apply several thin layers to gradually build up the brightness of the highlights. This technique helps create smooth transitions between colors and gives the miniature a more natural looking highlight. And here I'm more or less just layering over the Vampire Red instead of using an edge highlight technique. If you'd like to edge highlight this area, I'd recommend mixing your paint with a skin tone to avoid turning the tone of the paint pink. Speaking of our skin tone, we'll switch over to Barbarian Flesh, and we're using this to kind of restore the mid-tone to the skin after using Flesh Wash. The Flesh Wash kind of darkened it down just a bit too much, so we're just simply correcting in that step. They aren't featured in this video, but the new Speed Paint 2.0 complete set and also the metallic set is available for pre-order on our website over at wargamesdelivered.com. The complete set contains all 89 new speed paint colors and a large bottle of speed paint medium to get you started, which I find very useful. Go ahead and pick up yours now, available May 27th. Layering on another highlight here, we're going to add a drop of mummy robes to the Barbarian Flesh, just to bring up the overall skin tone and add a bit of highlighting on his nose, cheeks, and fingers. Avoid the recessed areas to keep the Barbarian Flesh showing underneath. I'm also adding a light highlight to the areas around his eyes and his ears, and with this step, pretty much just repeat what we did with the pure red over the vampire red. Just add layers, just make sure that the Barbarian Flesh is poking through underneath. And now we can move on to the eyes here using mummy robes. Again, this is a nice off-white ivory that will work well for the whites of his eyes. Use a detail brush to try and brace your hands and work as steadily as you can to avoid painting over any of the skin. Now we're using crystal blue to paint the irises of his eyes. Use the same technique I just mentioned in the previous step and try to place the crystal blue a bit off-center within the whites that we just painted. Eyes are a lot easier to paint if you have the model quote-unquote looking in a direction, so imagine where they would be looking and start as small as you can. And now repeat the same process we just used on the irises for the pupils using matte black. Try to paint a small dot in the center of the irises that we just painted, building it out if you need to. With those steps done, we really only have one step left to do on the mini, and that is to highlight all of the white on him. So we'll use a mix of stone golem and matte white. Thin this one down a little extra and use multiple layers to build up your highlights here. As you can see, if you're quick, you can wipe away any mistakes with a paper towel or your thumb if you need to before the paint dries. Again, take your time when highlighting, work carefully and methodically. Don't rush the process, don't be afraid to make mistakes. If you do make a mistake, simply correct it with a little bit of the base color and then come back with the highlight that you need and cover it back up. This is a lot more forgiving than using speed paints. You can really clean up certain areas a lot easier. The one main thing to look out for is just the gradient that we made with the airbrush in the initial step. That's the easiest thing to ruin on this model, I guess. So that's really the one thing to look out for here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more painting tutorials, and also be sure to check out the top link in the description for the giveaway attached to this video. Thanks again, guys, and happy wargaming!